Okay, we're back again. It's me and the Bad Bear and a cup of tea. Now, I have never owned a copy of the long-playing record Katie Lied by the popular beat group Steely Dan. I don't know why, because I've got all of the first 5 bar that one. I'm not so much of a fan of the later jazz ones, you know, there's nothing wrong with them, lots of people adore them. I like the early rock ones, I like especially the first 2. You know, when you could see they were a band, you know, with Jim Hodder singing Midnight Cruiser, and you know, David Palmer singing Dirty Work, and Jeff Baxter, you know, playing all these solos and stuff. They were fantastic, you know, in Midnight Cruiser. Elliot Randall playing in Friends and stuff, you know. And Count Zaxxon, Pretzel Logic. For some reason, it's probably at a time in my life when I'd moved to Scotland and I was homeless, so that's probably why I didn't own a copy of Katie Lied, and I've never rectified it, although I may go on eBay tonight and do it. But I do have a best of. And one thing I knew about Steely Dan and Katie Lied was I always had it in my head, you know, quite often the first impressions you get of a song tend to not be accurate. You know, someone can say to you, do you know that song? And you say, oh yeah, the one that's got this bit. And you go back and listen to it, and you go, oh, it's not like that. And I always thought that Chain Lightning was this incredibly long Steely Dan solo, you know. Not like a Rory Gallagher song like Messing with the Kid, where you get like 7, 8, 9 guitar solos, you know. I mean, Bodhisattva is quite a long one, and Denny Dias and Jeff Baxter both have a pop. I would say Do It Again, it's quite a long one. But I always felt Chain Lightning was. And the thing I always thought it reminded me of was a Nils Lofgren song called Home is Where the Hurt Is, where Nils kind of jumps keys during the song, which we'll get to in a minute, this one does. So the only recorded version of Chain Lightning that I have is on Showbiz Kids, the Steely Dan 2 CD best of, which, you know, it's almost like a teaching course for guitar. You know, it's got all the ones that you'd want. You know, it's got Mile School, Ricky Don't Lose That Number, Pretzel Logic, obviously Kid Charlemagne. You know, even if you weren't a Steely Dan fan, you could buy it just for all the guitar, which I would suspect a lot of Steely Dan fans did. A big crossover with the people who bought those albums because they loved the guys that played on them, whether it be guitar or you know, Phil Woods, sax solo in Doctor Who, and Jeff Porcaro, you know, who toured with them, so on some of the live stuff. Just the whole thing, right? It's not actually that long. The guitar solo in Chain Lightning is really not that long, and it's a very, very strange structure, because it's effectively what they would call, I think they called it on their second album, they referred to something as being an altered blues, you know, so that it was a blues song, but you know, obviously it wasn't. You know, it wasn't like a straight blues, you know. And this is kind of like that, you know. It uses a lot of sixth chords, you know. You know, he uses that. And the first time I heard it, when I heard the vocal line, I thought the guitars were playing. You know, it's just some of the, you know, it's got the F sharp and A to G, but it's that sixth chord. Then hit a C, and a G, then a D, and then this, which is an E seventh chord. But it's not that, you know, it's not that one that we might know, or even that one. It's like the C seventh, you know, moved up 4 fret. And then we're back to. Okay. The structure of the song that I said a second ago is quite unusual. Back me up on this, Ted. Is there's an intro section, which is a very late night jazz piano type thing, with that kind of guitar sound that I won't match with with a Les Paul through a little Boss amp, but it's got all the tone off, that, like, and it uses the octaves. Then there's a verse, with Donald Fagen singing, and it then goes into guitar solo for one verse. It then goes into a slightly more frenetic guitar solo for another verse, and then it carries on back to the vocal and then the end. So by the end of the third verse, the guitar break has been 2/3 of the song, if you see what I mean, because the three verses have been vocal, guitar solo, guitar solo. Now, here's an interesting bit. On Katy Lied, I mean, I just said a minute ago that I never owned a copy of it, but my friends did, and you would, in those days, you would look at the sleeve and just scan the small print, and, who produced this and who engineered this, who played tambourine on this, who were the backing vocalists, and Steely Dan's there's a lot of people involved. And in Prince of Logic and Katy Lied, they did not individually credit. And in my case, what I wanted to know was the guitarist. So you kind of get some Prince of Logic. When you hear Jeff Baxter go, or whatever he plays on Ricky Don't Lose That Number, and the same with on Night by Night. You can tell that's Jeff Baxter. But on Katy Lied, there were no individual credits, and speaking as possibly the world's greatest Rick Derringer aficionado, on the greatest hits, which I bought a few years back, looking through the credits, it's got Chain Lightning guitar solo by Rick Derringer, and I'm like, what? Because I knew that Rick Derringer was involved in Steely Dan, and he played that. He plays it on the slide. That's the sort of Showbiz Kids, he goes. Right? I knew that Derringer was a big part of doing sessions for Steely Dan, Alice Cooper, etc. But for some reason, when I heard that, and as I said, I didn't own a copy, so I only heard it when I was at someone else's house, it didn't really trigger me. That's your favourite, that's Rick Derringer playing that. And recently one of my friends said to me, it's actually not. And it's like, the guitar solos in two verses, one half's Rick, the other half is Walter Becker. And, that may well be the case, because he's a bigger Steely Dan font of knowledge than I am. But both solos to me do sound like Rick, especially one section in the second half of the solo. So what I'm going to do in the next video is I'm going to go through the solo, the chords first, and then the two guitar solos, just phrase by phrase. If you're in a band, you may not want to play Chain Lightning ever, but I wouldn't call this cheating, but it's a Steely Dan song that's quite accessible. It's only got one bit. It's only got one verse that's repeated over and over again. It's got two guitar solos. If you could learn those solos, learn the chords, which to me are quite unusual. I don't spend all day, playing C over G and stuff, and I don't spend all day playing an A with a with a sixth chord. It's not really my thing. Maybe it should be. Maybe I should know more of that stuff. But if you're playing in a covers band, Chain Lightning is one you could do. Is one you could definitely do. And I'm sure all the musos would nod appreciately and go, man, they're playing a Dan song, So in the next video, I'm going to go through both solos, the chords first, and then both guitar solos. In fact, I might take two videos, because it would take a long time. So there we are. Chain Lightning, guitar solos coming up.